I'll say 61 minutes. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Jackson, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous materials on the subject of the special order. It is with great honor that I rise today to co-anchor.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is with great honor that I rise today to co-anchor this Congressional Black Caucus Special Order Hour, along with my distinguished colleague, the Honorable Representative Sheila Sherfless McCormick. For the next 60 minutes, members of the Congressional Black Caucus have an opportunity to speak directly to the American people on women's history, an issue of great importance to the Congressional Black Caucus, Congress, the constituents that we represent, and all America. It is now my privilege to yield to the Honorable Sheila Sherfless McCormick from the great. It is now my privilege to yield to the Honorable Congressman Gabe from the great state of Rhode Island. Gabe Amo.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor Women's History Month. We cannot forget our history. Yet over time, the contributions of Black women have been consistently overlooked and forgotten. I want to do my part to correct that record. Specifically, I want to highlight 2 trailblazing Black women from Rhode Island. First, I want to honor Christiana Bannister, a successful businesswoman, abolitionist, and philanthropist. Born in North Kingstown in the early 1800s, Christiana was a successful hair salon owner. Christiana was a staunch abolitionist and used her wealth to support the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, a unit of Black soldiers during the Civil War. Dedicated to improving the lives of Black women in her community, Christiana founded the Home for Aged Colored Women in Providence. Decades later, Maria Lopes, another trailblazer, was the first Black woman elected to the Rhode Island State Legislature, and she carried on Christiana's legacy of activism in Rhode Island. Maria lived in the Valley View housing project in Providence and made a name for herself as a social activist when she successfully blocked the mayor of Providence from turning the housing project into luxury apartments. In 1973, Maria stormed the city council chambers with over 400 residents and supporters to prevent the sale of Valley View. Thanks to Maria's advocacy, when Valley View was eventually sold, 25% of the units remained Section 8 housing. In 1989, Lopes won a seat in the Rhode Island House of Representatives, where she served for over a decade championing affordable housing issues. I certainly would not be standing here today as Rhode Island's first Black member of Congress if it were not for the tireless work of Maria Lopes and Christiana Bannister. Women's history extends beyond the confines of March. Women's history is happening every single day and is worth acknowledgement every day as well. We must continue to uplift the hidden figures in our history. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
I'd like to thank the Honorable Gabe Amo from the great state of Rhode Island. Madam Speaker, it is my pleasure now to introduce the Honorable Congresswoman Sheila Sherfless McCormick of the great state of Florida.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to thank my co-anchor, Jonathan Jackson from the great state of Illinois, for co-anchoring this special order for now a year and a half, I think it is. Well, I rise today in honor of the courageous Black women trailblazers whose determination and unwavering dedication have shaped the history of our country. Because of them, I can speak before you on this floor today. As we celebrate Women's History Month, we reflect on the courage and the commitment of Black women who have led an indelible mark on our society and inspired future generations to carry the torch of justice. Among these trailblazers stands Shirley Chisholm, who shattered the glass ceiling in American politics. She holds a special place in my heart. Shirley Chisholm broke down the barriers and beat the odds to become the first Black woman elected to Congress in 1968. She proudly fought for the rights of neglected communities and progressive politics that benefit working families. Her historic 1972 presidential campaign upended the status quo and gave hope to a new generation of leaders by encouraging them to trust in the strength of their voices. However, Shirley Chisholm wasn't alone. She was surrounded by women such as Barbara Jordan, a powerful force in American politics due to her unrelenting devotion to justice. She made history by being the first Black woman elected to the Texas Senate and the first Black woman from the South to be elected to the United States House of Representatives. She worked nonstop to advocate for civil rights, immigration reform, and the rule of law. Last year, we mourned the loss of Eddie Bernice Johnson. I had the honor of serving alongside her at the end of the 117th Congress. Her whole life was about serving others. Whether it was as a nurse at the VA in Dallas, or it was in the halls of this very institution. These trailblazers and countless others who followed in their footsteps have made a lasting impression on women's history. Their legacy is proof of the perseverance of the American people. We can pay tribute to these extraordinary people during Women's History Month by recommitting to the fight for justice, equality, and opportunity for all Americans. In their honor, let us strive to create a better union for all the generations to come. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
I would like to thank the Honorable Congresswoman Sheila Sherfless McCormick from the great state of Florida. It is now my privilege to yield to the Honorable Congresswoman Joyce Beatty from the great state of Ohio.
Madam Speaker, it is my honor to rise today to join my colleagues for this special order hour. I cannot think of a better time that I would stand in this House and be able to salute women, especially Black women. I say to our co-anchors, the Honorable Jonathan Jackson, and my good friend and co-anchor, the Honorable Sheila Sherfless McCormick, thank you. Thank you for being our anchor, and thank you for reminding us of our rich history. And today, as we will hear many members of the Congressional Black Caucus come forward and talk about a list of women, especially Black women, those who came before us and their shoulders we stand on, like Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Shirley Chisholm, to coming today, Madam Speaker, where tomorrow, for the third time, a woman will sit in the seat where you are sitting as we hear the State of the Union. A Black woman who also happens to be the first ever Vice President of these United States of America. We also celebrate this month, sadly that we're giving it 1 month. Obviously, if I had my way, co-anchor, we'd celebrate it every day. But we will honor women like those who have been able to sit in that seat running Fortune 500 companies. People like Ursula Burns, my good friend Roz Brewer, and now Thasunda Duckett. We also honor young women like poet Amanda Gorman. When we think of the women who have done so much, whether they are doctors or athletes or educators or judges, yes, like Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, another Black woman whose shoulders we stand on. But let me end with this. You saved the best for last, Madam Speaker. 31 black women serving in the United States Congress. If I had enough time, I'd do a roll call telling you that they hail from Alabama to Washington, D.C. But let me just leave it at this. 31 black women. Thank God we put people over politics. 31 black women serving in this chamber that understand that we have a right to women's reproductive rights. 31 black women understanding that we support the child's tax credit. 31 black women who understand that more women are now insured because of the Affordable Health Care Act. 31 black women who understand that the first act that then President Obama signed was the Lilly Ledbetter Act. I could go on and give you a walk through this amazing history that I have been allowed to serve in. As the 9th black woman to have chaired the Congressional Black Caucus, I say to you that we have been fortunate to have another female sit in that chair as the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. And so, as those who are witnessing us tonight, I say to all watching, we celebrate, we honor, we stand on the shoulders of women, especially black women, because we know when women succeed, America succeeds. Thank you, and let us continue to put people over politics. I yield back.
I would like to thank the Honorable former Congressional Black Caucus Chairwoman, the Honorable Congresswoman Joyce Beatty from the great state of Ohio. It is now my privilege to yield to the Honorable Congressman Payne from the great state of New Jersey.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the gentleman from Illinois for that kind introduction, and also the gentlelady from Florida for hosting this special order hour. They come here every week bringing the message from the CBC and do an incredible job. Also, it's very difficult to follow my classmate, the former chair lady of the CBC. It's a very hard act to follow, and so when I see her, I kind of cringe because I know I better get it together. But the Honorable Joyce Beatty has been a true friend, sister, and colleague to me. And to you, Madam Speaker, as you sit in that seat, it is apropos that this month you have been given the honor to stand over the Speaker's rostrum and control the House of Representatives. So I salute you as well as a woman. I rise today to celebrate the influence and achievements of women, of black women in America during Women's History Month. But first, I would like to discuss the origins of Women's History Month. Women's History Month started as Women's History Week in Santa Rosa, California in 1978. The local Sonoma County Commission on the Status of Women planned a week of celebratory events to connect the International Women's Day on March 8th. The events highlighted the many contributions of women to American history and culture and society. And it included school presentations in Sonoma County, a student essay contest to honor local women, and with a parade through the downtown of Santa Rosa. The year after that, Santa Rosa's Historic Week triggered similar events to celebrate women in communities nationwide. In addition, historians and women activist groups began to push for a National Women's History Week. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued the first presidential proclamation to declare the first week in March as National Women's History Week. But 1 week was not enough to celebrate the enormous contributions of women to American history. So Congress created Women's History Month in 1987. And it stated that the month would recognize the specific achievements of women have made over the course of America's history in a variety of fields. This month, we honor women from all races, cultures, creeds during Women's History Month. But we are here today as the CBC to honor Black women who have made a difference in America. And many of them need to be recognized more often. Women like Bessie Coleman, the first Black woman to be a licensed pilot in this country. Alice Coachman, the first Black woman to win an Olympic medal for the United States of America. Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler, the first Black woman to earn a medical degree in the United States. Phyllis Wheatley, the first Black woman to publish a book in this great country. And Mary Jane Patterson, the first Black woman to graduate from an established college. We also have Mary Eliza Mahoney, the first black nurse and eventual co-founder of the American Nurses Association. More than that, Maloney was one of the first women to register to vote in Boston after her retirement in 1920. Maggie Lee Walker, the first Black woman to start a bank and serve as the president of a U.S. bank. Alice Dunning, the first Black woman to cover the White House as a reporter. Mae Jemison, the first Black woman to become an astronaut and go into space. And Jemison overcame her fear of heights to do that. Can you imagine? These extraordinary Black women are a few of the millions of who have made a difference in our country. Today, Black women are setting new standards of excellence in the sciences, the arts, athletics, politics, mathematics, education, medicine, and the law, just to name a few. I'm proud to be here to celebrate the contributions of a Black woman. I am the product of a Black woman, and all women to their betterment, for the betterment of America. They have helped to build this country, and we must do everything possible to protect the rights they have worked so hard for. And as we discuss the whole notion around Black women and what they have contributed to this country, let's not forget all women and what they have done in this country. So I'm just honored to be here on the floor tonight to say thank you to the many Black women that have made a difference in my life. Jean Blakely, Esther Wright, Kate Thompson Payne, Dr. Jacqueline Young, just to name very few. Wanda Payne, my late sister. I have been molded by Black women all my life and just feel an obligation to stand in the trenches and help them advance their careers. Sarah Jones, just to name one. So I'm just really delighted to be here and express my gratitude to women, to Black women, and women as a whole. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
I would like to thank the Honorable Congressman Donald Payne, Jr. from the great state of New Jersey. It's been a pleasure of mine to have worked with his father and to see his honorable son continue on in his tradition. Tonight, in this great chamber, we gather to honor and remember the contribution of women to the indispensable future of the American experiment with democracy. And in particular, I rise to give special commendation to the role that Black women have played in the formation of American possibilities. It is not such a stretch to suggest that America would be unlivable for a great many of its citizens were it not for the indelible work and prophetic imagination of women in this country. Where would this country be without Eleanor Roosevelt, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm, Diane Nash, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi, the Honorable Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Black women and all women really are the fabric that holds this nation together. Because when men have followed their egos and ambition into war and repression, it was the women of this country who stood up to the madness, demanding ever more forcefully that the center must hold. And on this side of the aisle, we still believe that every woman should have the right to vote, the right to equal pay for equal work, the right for every opportunity and resources available to any man. We believe that when at all possible, no woman should ever lose her life giving birth to a child in the United States of America. We believe that the maternal mortality rates of black women is a moral indictment against the persistence of bigotry and discrimination in America. And on this side of the aisle, we believe in the right of every woman to control what happens to her body as a matter of reproductive justice, personal autonomy, and self-determination. How dare any man tell a woman what she can do with her body? How dare any government come in between a woman and her medical decisions? And how dare any political party use a woman's body as an opportunity to get elected rather than respecting the fact that every woman is made in the image of God? But that's the difference between this side of the aisle and, I must say, the other side of the aisle. This side of the aisle gave the nation Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson to be the first African-American woman to sit on the Supreme Court. The other side of the aisle has spent the last 50 years trying to destroy Roe versus Wade. And even after they facilitated that disaster, they even are now trying to undermine in vitro fertilization. Because that's the difference between this side of the aisle and the other side when it comes to issues that matter. This side of the aisle produced the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, who was principally responsible for passing the Affordable Care Act that has allowed millions of people to come out of the suffering shadows and receive the health care coverage they deserve. While on the other side of the aisle, leaders of that party facilitated a racist lie regarding the birth certificate of the former President of the United States, President Barack Obama. This side of the aisle facilitated the passage of Title IX. Many people are excited to see women playing basketball now, but that was a part of the civil rights legislation that we hold dear. Title IX is a law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in schools or any educational programs. And some have said that this law has single-handedly been the reason little girls all over America enjoy opportunities that their grandmothers never had. Because on this side of the aisle, we believe that every child is precious and that every little girl is a gift from God. And on this side of the aisle, we don't want our sons to have any more opportunities than our daughters get to enjoy. On this side of the aisle, we fight to expand freedom, opportunity, and the securities of justice to every American, regardless of race, class, gender, or sexual orientation. I can't speak for anyone else, but on this side of the aisle, we believe that the Bible, when it says, "Our sons and your daughters shall prophesy." And let me remind you today that as the son of a civil rights movement, I am keenly aware of the fact that the movement that made my election possible would not have been probable were it not for many black women. I stand on the shoulders of many of these remarkable black women who give their gift of insight, their gift of grit and generosity, and support the weight of generations yet unborn. I see them all over the home district in Chicago and the greater part of Illinois. I have encountered them in the churches on the South Side. They raised me. My mother and my sisters are one of them. They say hi to me in the supermarket. They meet me all over the district to talk to me about our nation, their need, and their lives. They are the daughters of thunders and children of light, and today I'm honored to recognize them. Today, I proverbially tip my hat and genuflect in the presence of such unusual greatness, and I am grateful today for the women in this chamber who are my colleagues. I'm grateful for what they do and for what they represent. For let us never forget that at the founding of this great institution, at the founding of this great country in 1776, and at the ratification of our Constitution in 1787, it was never in the imagination of the founders that a woman would sit in these chambers or cast votes as a member of this body. But look at what determination and faith can do. Look at what hard work and love for justice can do. So I celebrate each of you, the honorable women that serve in this Congress, and I pray that this country will continue to create greater room and greater opportunities for the genius in this nation's women so that they can flourish and we can live up to our highest potential. I would like to yield to the Honorable Sheila Sherfulis McCormick from the great state of Florida.
Thank you, Congressman Jonathan Jackson. Madam Speaker, as we gather here today, we must recognize and honor the contributions of Black women in politics. These leaders have paved the way for all women to have a seat at the table. We look back at the significant historical events like the Civil Rights Movement. We tend to overlook the women who played significant roles behind the scenes. The time to acknowledge their contributions and celebrate their achievements is long overdue. There is one particular person who I would like to highlight, Miss Parthra Hall. Born on January 1st, 1940, she was known by various titles, including mother, preacher, feminist, and civil rights activist. Most importantly, she was the key inspiration behind Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s prominent speech, "I Have a Dream," delivered during the August 1963 March on Washington. Despite experiencing racism and personal tragedies from a young age, Hall was able to follow in her father's footsteps and become a passionate advocate for racial and social justice. This story is simply one of many who, despite being a key piece to the puzzle of our democratic system and making up 7.8% of the population, Black women are less than 5% office holders elected to serve in executive office, Congress, and the state legislature. Black women have given 110% of their time and effort in leading and in serving as attorneys, plaintiffs, organizers, educators, secretaries, and while playing many more roles in the background. March is a significant month to honor the contributions of Black women in American history. We shouldn't just honor the legacy of Parthra Hall on this single day. It is our responsibility to honor her every single day from now on. As Black women continue to struggle for representation, we have a responsibility to ensure the progress made by Black women in the past is not lost. We have a responsibility to pursue and fight for equality for everyone and make sure our fight for equality is eventually attained. Mrs. Speaker, I yield back to Jonathan.
Thank you, the Honorable Congresswoman Sheila Sherfulis McCormick from the great state of Florida. Madam Speaker, thank you. You've heard from my distinguished colleagues about women's history and the many great contributions they have made. Madam Speaker, I am honored to introduce the Congressional Black Caucus Chairman, the Honorable Congressman Stephen Horsford from the great state of Nevada.
I thank Congressman Jackson and Congresswoman Sherfulis McCormick for co-anchoring tonight's special order hour. I want to thank all of the members who have come to honor the start of Women's History Month. And I rise today with my colleagues of the Congressional Black Caucus to commemorate Women's History Month and to reflect on the innumerable contributions to our country that women, and Black women specifically, have made throughout our nation's history. During Women's History Month, we celebrate the generations of Black women whose courage, advocacy, sacrifice, and patriotism have moved our country and the world forward. For generations, Black women have been hidden figures, leading our country through social evolutions, critical periods of growth, and eras of innovation. From the civil rights movement to consistently serving as a foundation for our community's success, Black women continue to push the needle. In fact, to the co-chairs, just this weekend, we were in Selma for the 59th commemoration of Bloody Sunday. And one of the people that we had the honor of hearing from was Miss King, who was the person who received the letters from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was writing the letter in a Birmingham jail. But as she explained that process, it was his handwritten notes on scraps of paper that were passed to his attorney that ultimately were written by this Black woman that actually gave us that letter. I went up to her after the conclusion of her panel, and I thanked her for being a part of history and being a part of the movement that led to the passage of the civil rights legislation and so many important bills. It was also in 1968 where Shirley Chisholm became the first Black woman in Congress. She, along with her colleagues, sought to make America live up to its promise that we are all created equal, and in this body founded the Democratic Select Committee, which ultimately would become the Congressional Black Caucus. I am so honored to serve as chairman of this Congressional Black Caucus, and I'm proud to say that today we are now comprised of the largest membership in our nation's history. The CBC has grown from 13 members when we were founded 52 years ago to 60 members, representing more than a third of the U.S. population, including more than 20 million Black Americans. But it is on Shirley Chisholm's shoulders that the Congressional Black Caucus has continued to fight to dismantle barriers, to create opportunities, and to protect the very rights of every individual, regardless of their circumstance, because we believe, as Ms. Shirley Chisholm believed, that in a future where everyone can thrive and achieve their full potential. Every day, we build on the legacy of Representative Shirley Chisholm, understanding that we must always speak truth to power and to stand up for the values that we hold dear. We remain mindful that we must work to push back against efforts that impede progress, including those to roll back women's rights or to cut off access to capital and to better opportunities. This month and every month, we will remain mindful that we must directly address the challenges that persist, particularly for Black women in this climate. Black maternal mortality is at an all-time high, and access to reproductive care, access to the ballot box, fair representation, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and in corporate America, and fundamental freedoms are under threat every day. As the conscience of the Congress, the Congressional Black Caucus will continue working, fighting, and leading to protect abortion rights, to invest in child care, to deliver paid leave, and finally achieve pay equity for Black women and to close the racial wealth gap in America. These are the priorities that the Congressional Black Caucus believes are important as we uplift the issues of Women's History Month. Again, I want to thank our co-anchors for leading tonight's special order hour and all of our members, and especially the women of the Congressional Black Caucus. When we started 52 years ago, the CBC was made up of 13 people, 12 men, and 1 Black woman. Today, I'm proud that of those 60 members of the CBC, 31 are women, Black women, who are leading in the Congressional Black Caucus. We've come a long way. We have a much longer way to go, and I want to thank the members for their work on these important topics. With that, I yield back.
I would like to thank the tireless fighter, our leader, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Chairman Stephen Horsford from the great state of Nevada. At this time, I'd like to thank my co-anchor, the Honorable Sheila Sherfilis McCormick from the great state of Florida. Madam Speaker, you've heard from my distinguished colleagues about African Americans' contributions to America, to history, to American history, Women's History Month. All issues of great importance to the Congressional Black Caucus, our constituents, Congress, and all Americans tonight. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields.